reminder to record too. Actually, give me 1 second there. Okay, cool. We're recording now. Cool. Thank you, Willow. So anyway, I'll open it up. Has anybody implemented a health score recently that they'd like to maybe share how they're doing that? Because I think this is one of those elusive topics. Frankly, I'm not convinced our software vendors in this space have it all figured out appropriately yet. I don't know that I believe in their methodology for this, but I'm curious to hear what you guys are doing and what's working. Does anybody want to lead us off?
I'm happy to start. So hi everyone, Sarah Bocchino. I'm with a small startup. Well, I don't want to say small startup, mid-sized startup called Integrate. We're out of Phoenix, and I've been with them for about 1.5 years now. When I came to Integrate, we did not have, I would say 90% of our accounts were green. And when I think of a green account, I think it's 100% referenceable. We could call on them anytime. Very much an advocate. As I spent my first 6 months here, I started realizing that we were seeing a lot of green to gones. Customers were churning, which, I knew we had a health problem. I didn't realize how bad it was. And there was a company culture around red accounts, right? So if you had a red account, it was like, oh my God, you're not doing something right. I'm going to get fired. Like there was just this really horrible sense versus it being an act of paranoia and getting everybody on the same page to say, okay, something's not right, either internally or with the customer. So my first charge here was really just to kind of level set and understand what a healthy customer looks like at Integrate and what a troubled account looks like. So we created our first iteration of customer health. I'd say we launched it in August of 2019 and have pretty much evolved it every quarter, just as our business has evolved and as our company has really embraced a culture of customer success. It's heavily weighted in usage. I will go ahead and say that now. So records through our system is the biggest indicator. We also base that off of some of the other things would be their engagement with us, which is a little bit harder to manage, support tickets submitted, and then just overall adoption of our product suites. And I apologize, I have a 2.5-year-old here.
You're brave. Thank you, Sarah.
So then as COVID, part of our business is an event lead management tool where we actually help customers capture leads on site at in-person events, funnel them through our platform to help weed out the Mickey Mouse at mickeymouse.coms, and then we're a data governance layer between them and their marketing automation platform. As you can imagine, we've taken a huge hit with COVID recently. And so with our events only customers, we have been tracking, we utilize Gainsight for our customer health and customer success teams, and that's really our source of truth. What's interesting is that I would say we have 200 accounts that make up for about $3 million of our business specific to events. We have about $10 million in business SaaS customers where that's just a component of it. So does anybody else here use Gainsight? Christy? Yeah. So you're probably familiar. They just recently released something that we've found helpful when it comes to health sentiment. So you can actually track within the health sentiment the COVID impact and keep that separate from the general account health. And so that's really how we've evolved it, right? Because for a majority of our customers and a majority of our business, the overall account health is still really healthy, but there might be a revenue impact to the customer that we need to take into account. There could be a revenue impact to us, meaning that a portion of that business is not going to renew. And then there might just be hey, we're just really focused on optimization right now, et cetera. So that's really helped us in this era. and we've gone from assessing it every quarter to really looking at it every week. So I don't know if that was helpful.
Yeah. Big time. I really like the idea of moving away from this company culture of red accounts being like a bad thing, because red accounts happen for so many different reasons. Like sometimes the CSMs can get a little intimidated if that happens and they think it's on them, but we talk about it all the time. It's a company issue. So I like that. Anybody else have any, like to share what they're doing with regard to health?
Sure. I'll jump in and kind of share my framework. So we are also using Gainsight. We've got 4 different health scores that we use across our different segments, because no 2 segment reacts and responds the same way to the same things. So we analyze them very differently. Everything from our engagement model to executive sponsorship and engagement is different, right? We don't have assigned exec sponsors for our smaller segments, right? We get engaged when we need to, but for our larger segments, it's part of our customer journey and model. So we've got 4 different health scores, but they all look at similar metrics. So what we do is we look at sentiment, which is it's CS sentiment. So really just how is the customer success manager or person managing the account feeling about the account? Obviously, as a gut check, like they're going to know from calls that they're having, customers' engagement, how they're using the product, how the customer is doing. So we take into account that. Then their onboarding sentiment, we also take that into account, and that only lives on for the period of the journey where they're in onboarding. So our health scores also have some time limitations to them for certain components. So the onboarding one is only for the duration of time that they're in onboarding, and then for the trailing 120 days, because that also helps us understand, was there successful implementation obviously driving successful engagement, or was there risk in onboarding that we're obviously trying to overcome? So we do look at that for a period of time as well. For technical support, we don't look at volume of tickets, because I do believe that customers that are highly engaged are probably going to have a lot of questions about the product, and things will come up just because they're using it a lot. So we try to look at things like time to resolution of those tickets or the severity of them. So we use Zendesk for our ticket management. So there's other metrics that we look at to analyze, kind of quantify the kind of activity that's happening in those tickets to say whether or not the customer is at risk as a result of those tickets. Services, so are they engaging with our services team? And if so, to what extent? There's sentiment coming from that. Product, this will look at product adoption. So we've got some core functionality that we look and analyze. So we take into account how they're using the product, the frequency of that. We also, our product has many components of it. Like we've got a core team, like your administrative team, but then you also have end users. So we also weigh out those differently. So if you're an end user and you're using our product, maybe the mobile part of it, we don't weigh in that person's usage the same way we would like the overall admin team who's administering and really kind of analyzing the data in our software. So there's 2 different user groups, and we analyze those separately as well, because not every person is treated the same. We also do look to see if our executives are logging in. And so for them, it's very basic. Like, do they even know what our platform does? Do they ever go in it? And so for them, it's just, it's a good way for us to just say from a user standpoint, great, like our execs actually know how to log into the platform, which is better than those that don't. We also look at NPS. So we obviously will do our NPS surveys, and then using promoter detractor passives to say, okay, red, yellow, green. So that has a component as well. We do CSAT periodically. So depending on different stages of the journey and different things that have been completed, we'll run a CSAT survey. So that gets pulled in. CES as well in the product. We do look at engagement. So how often are we engaging with the customer? Each segment has a recommended engagement model. So we know that not every customer is going to engage us the way we want them to. But we do recommend to each segment that they be engaging with their customers and what we would call a high valued activity. So an HVA. A high valued activity would be an on-site meeting, a successful completed EBR, a video meeting, things of those sorts. We don't look at things like email correspondence. That to us is not a high valued activity. Yep. So how often are those customers engaging with us? And what is the difference from the recommended timeline? So for example, for our enterprise segment, we do recommend between 3 to 4 weeks that we're engaging with those customers that often. So when they get to a point beyond 8 weeks, I think we set the threshold at for there, then it goes into red. So we do give them a little buffer there, but it's to say like you're approaching that timeline of now we're going to exceed that limit. And then when we get beyond that. We look at, again, so we talked about adoption, but we also look at like usage, so different users, usage there. And then the last component that we have is executive engagement. Each of our segments has a different executive engagement model. So for our strategic accounts and enterprise, there is, our senior directors or our senior leadership team getting involved at different stages of the journey proactively, not just during those business reviews. So those are all playbooks that we've got that are automatically triggered based on time, different time points in the journey. And so when those go off, we weigh that in as well. So did the executive have a successful engagement with the customer, right? Did they respond to our outreach? Did we get a meeting scheduled? And, have we continued to foster and build that relationship? So like I said, those are the things that we're looking at. They're different, and the weighting for all of those is different for all 4 of our segments. But the way that we've structured it is that it is hard to get to green. It is near impossible to get to green. So what we set our health score at is not kind of like, okay, we're looking at this to indicate risk. What we do is we set this to say green is what the best looks like. It is like the ideal holy grail state of your customer base. So we anticipate that most of our customers are going to be in red and yellow. And so I think doing it that way helps us get away from this fear factor of like, oh my God, red is the worst thing. We know that it is really hard to get to green, but when we get to green, we've gotten past all these hurdles and we've gotten to a place where these customers really have embraced us into their organization. We're helping them drive organizational and operational efficiency. So we're working at it from that direction, right? Like, so most of our customers, yellow, red, we're kind of okay with that. We do have other indicators and ways that we track churn. So we've got other fields that we've set up in our Gainsight platform that when the CSMs understand that there's certain factors that we need to kind of flag that may be indicative of a customer not renewing with us, we've got other ways to track that, not just using our health score for it. Because again, we want the health score to help us understand, are we doing the right things to help our customers drive success from the partnership? So that's how we're using it.
That's great, Christy. I feel like I just got a dissertation on how to do that in a good way.
Yes. That's great.
I've got my spreadsheet if anyone wants it. That's what I had to pull it up. I was like, wait, hold on, let me see.
Yeah. Share it.
I don't know that anyone wants to read through all my rubbish, but so yes, happy to pass it along.
Here's a question for you all, and I want to hear from some others as well. But I'm sort of doubtful in some ways that a single score to show red, yellow, or green health of the account is enough to really help us drive visibility into where the hotspots are in the customer account. So is anybody using multiple indicators as opposed to one score? And by the way, I mean, you clearly have it dialed in, Sarah and Christy, so I'm not arguing with it, but I wonder if anybody's using a set of indicators that maybe it's like business health, engagement health, product, engagement health, and usage, and maybe a handful of different indicators. And then any one of those could be red, yellow, or green. And we know what the response would be. So I'm curious if anybody's using that type of methodology, and how you've implemented it.
Yeah, Jay, I'll speak up really quickly because I got to drop off here in just a minute. So we use client success, obviously with client success. So similar to what Gainsight uses in a measurement, we break each one of those categories down the way that we track them in key adoption, usage, engagement, sentiment, and enablement. And then there are multiple metrics underneath each one of those groups, and we weight each one of those groups so they stand alone, and then they do also roll up into an overall score so that at least you have a score that you can generally track, though what really matters is your minimum and your maximum for your baseline you've set for each one of those metric groups, because you have multiple metrics underneath each one of those groups.
Yeah.
So we do measure it separately. And then for convenience sake, we have an overall, what we call a success score. So it's just easy to segment based on that general success score. And then you can drill down and focus on, okay, where are the problems? If they're doing really well in the other areas, where are the problems? Maybe it's sentiment, maybe it's engagement, which sentiment could be NPS, or it could be what we call pulse, which is just the pulse of the customer, the general emotional health of the customer.
Right. Okay, that's good. Yeah, I like that, Jaren. Jennifer, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, we do something very similar where we use the groups functionality within Gainsight. So the different measures that we're tracking will roll up into a group. We'll have different reports that we have where we just look at that group. So just sentiment, just adoption, either systemized sentiment or whether it's CSM sentiment. So we can see that overall. But we've also taken it a step further where we are automating either CTAs directly to the CSM or escalated CTAs for the executive team when a customer gets to a point within one of those measures where it's either a risk activity or where it's a potential opportunity of expansion or renewal, or early renewal, more or less. And then we have dashboards that are built out based off those automated CTAs to help increase it and to help kind of segment off into the different ways that our scorecards are being used.
Hey, Jay, can I ask a related question? And because we're in the process now of, pardon the pun, of building all the processes in place for health scoring and a whole lot, and we're piloting, testing them out, and we're looking at some stage to automate this by way of some sort of CS platform or through Salesforce, where we have a lot of data at the moment. But has anyone who's implemented all these wide-ranging metrics actually been able to stand back and say, as a result of implementing all of these metrics to some degree of complexity, we definitely drove up our retention rate, 5 points, 6 points, 2 points, which justified the cost of the investment of the CS platform? Jaron Stevens, you're not allowed to answer that question. So I'm just curious, has anyone actually proved that correlation?
So I can speak a little to that. So first time being here, so nice to meet everybody. I'm with Critical Start. We're a managed detection response provider located out of Texas. Anyway, we're actually just upgraded to Salesforce, and we're in the process of we're vetting some of the actual like tools like Gainsight, Strike Deck, things like that. I will say that with the way that we track everything right now, it's very manual, more like like we do with spreadsheets and everything. But I can't really give you like a specific like how many points type of thing. But I can tell you we've actually been able to save accounts very effectively using those metrics, because within Salesforce, what we've done is we started building out automated workflows that when part of their health score drops, because we do kind of that, I think everybody does it a little the same way, is you have a multifaceted score where their overall score may be X, but their engagement is low, or your CSM is like, hey, I don't think they're happy. There's a lot of gut feel to that when you're talking to them.
Yeah.
So what we've done is we've developed specific playbooks in Salesforce that for specific triggers we can engage different teams. So a good one is if you have a new CIO, CISO, in my case, they come in, the first thing they do is, where's my money going? And you almost have to kind of redo your sales cycle with that person, like schedule an EBC, things like that. And because we've had those indicators, we've been able to like trigger that, get the account manager involved, get product involved, so we can, maintain that account. Or if we start noticing, like in Zendesk, their satisfaction rating on tickets is just like trending downward, then we've been able to kick off the same process to engage with the client, say, what's going on here? Is it with us? Is it with another vendor? What do we need to do to help?
So you've set all that up in Salesforce basically today, Josh.
Yeah. So we have our core playbooks, which is like a loss of champion, the person there that's your cheerleader to keep you in the account, change of leadership, NPS drops or ticket or trending level of satisfaction is down, or the account or our CSM can just trigger any of those if they feel like something's wrong, like if they stop taking your calls type of thing. Because I think for me, I'm fine with a customer being upset with us and being happy with us, but what scares me the most is when they just stop talking to you.
Totally. Yeah.
I would say one thing, we haven't been able to actually quantify this is how much of a gain we've gotten. We have seen an improvement in our expansion and renewals, but I can't quantify it. I think a lot of it depends on how the CSMs are adopting it. The thing that I would say has improved the most for us is the visibility. So we're not as surprised when things do happen, so we are able to get ahead of it. And we're obviously always working towards figuring out how we can better quantify, but there are just so many variables that roll into it. We can't merge them together.
Hey, Sarah, I don't know if you can hear us, but if you can, would you mute? Yeah, that makes sense. okay, I guess a question in all of this is, as you guys think about these metrics, how are you really differentiating and getting into the things that really matter, that are truly leading indicators of this? Let me see if I can get her here. But I don't know if anybody has thoughts on that. Leading indicators versus, I mean, there's a ton of stuff we could look at, right? But there's probably only a handful of things that really, really matter and are really, really signals. So what are those things for you all? How do you differentiate? There we go.
For on my side, it's one is platform utilization. Like, are they logging in? How much time are they spending in it? To make sure that it's being sticky. The other things is like, do they accept our calls? Do we get ghosted a lot or anything like that? Like that's one of our lead indicators as well. Have they said they're willing to be a reference customer? So we kind of like weight all this stuff, and it comes out to like 105% with the reference customer being kind of like a bonus. But yeah, it's just all, but that's kind of a breakdown of what we're doing.
We're looking at changes in the numbers too. So not just like if they're logging in and using it, but if the way that they were using it has shifted from what we had discussed in the past. We find that a lot of our customers have new people come in. There's a lot of change in their own side. There's a lot of turnover, especially these days. So being able to see like if things are either increasing rapidly or things are decreasing rapidly, or else if a way that they were having one of their workflows operate all of a sudden shifts, and we weren't anticipating that, that usually is an indicator to us that we need to be proactive and reach out and figure out what's going on and what sort of change management we need to do as a result of it.
Yeah, that's good. I want to leave space for anybody else who wants to try to get in here. But a good question came up in the chat a couple of minutes ago too, which is a lot of the things, and I think, I know I'm guilty of this. We talk about a lot of things that work really, really well with larger and medium-sized accounts, but then most of us have this long tail as well that we're trying to pay attention to. Has anybody got that dialed out and figured out?
I would like to participate. My name is Ali. I work for a company called Sella. We are same like Shopify. We help people create their online stores here in Saudi Arabia. At this moment, with the recent COVID situation here in Saudi Arabia, we have so many people jumping into creating online stores. So that's long tail. We have huge increase in daily registration for people creating their online stores. Before that, we didn't have any clear onboarding process for that segment of the market, where traditional shops creating online shops, they with zero background on e-commerce. We have noticed that these people creating their online stores without our help have caused churn. So what I want to say is poor onboarding in the first place is a very effective and causing churn. So what we did is we have created an onboarding process for these people in 10 days, trying to help them to activate their online stores within 10 days with extensive training. That means online webinars through Zoom on a daily basis with the owners and with their teams. These webinars are being attended by around 50 to 80 people per day, per session. And with that, we have noticed a huge increase in the usage, and also a huge increase in converting from monthly plans to yearly and annual plans. So they have noticed the value, but they needed the help from our side to kick off the work on their online stores. That's what I have to say.
That's great. Yeah, onboarding seems like it's a critical milestone in your customer journey to get right. Great. Anybody else have any thoughts or want to share what they're doing on this? This is really helpful. I think these ideas and concepts.
I'll jump in. This is actually a really timely conversation because one of the goals that I have is to actually get back to having some kind of health score. We had one in the past with our software. It wasn't, I don't even know how it was put together. It was like a mix of like black magic and unicorn tears. And then you just had to be like, oh, that looks like it's unhealthy. Like it was literally some kind of weird data science thing, but no one could tell you what it was consisting of. So we're about to move into like the upgraded version of the CS software we use, which is Strike Deck. And I'm reading through, you can basically design your own health score, and they have, in their help center, they have all of this information on health scoring. And a lot of it, is based on usage and NPS. And I like usage, but to me, it's more of a lagging indicator because we're looking at it, what happened before, what happened in the last 30, 60, 90 days, that's behind me. So I'm trying to find something, and I really don't want to do it manually, but because I don't want to have a spreadsheet that could launch the space shuttle, which looks like that's what happens half the time. So I'm trying to figure out what is the best things for us. And actually, I swear I'm not doing this as like some kind of to gain favor from Jay and Jeff, but I was listening to the episode of your podcast recently with, I think, Chris from Nuff Said, and I've listened to it twice now because I've taken notes and thinking about things like maturity and the people and the product and the pricing. We're actually going through some new packaging and pricing. We have a meeting tomorrow, so that will be interesting. But I want to look at it more towards, especially for us and the type of software we have, usage is great. But like you talk about in that podcast, and I've done the analysis on why people churn, engagement is such a small part of it because we've seen the people that use it every day and then they still churn. So what does that really mean? Like if the decisions are being made higher. So yes, having more, being more in depth with the executives and that 1, 2, 3 model, 1 executive, 2 champions and 3 power users, or as best you can.
Yep.
How in depth have we gone with this client? Do we have buy-in? But I'm looking, I really want to dig more into the maturity because what I think, and I know Christy is a little familiar from her past, a lot of, our product in the market is kind of sophisticated. It's not kind of, it is sophisticated. And we do get a lot of people that, a lot of customers in where their teams are not. So that would be a maturity issue. And we see that they end up, when they do churn and they go to a competitor, which maybe isn't even on the same level of us, maybe they're these cheaper point solutions, it's because the point solutions satisfy their knowledge level, their maturity level. Yep. And I don't know how to, and that was also a conversation with sales when they're doing their prospecting and having these conversations. Let's judge the maturity level of these people. But I'm wondering, has anybody used a maturity model for their customers, and how are they doing that? Like, I'm trying to put this together so that I can present this to my team. I'm going to have to use Strike Deck for some of it, but I'd like to use that kind of like Christie's model, or I think Sarah and somebody else mentioned it. Like, there's got to be nuance. There's got to be different segments to this overall health indicator. And this is where I'm struggling. Like, how should I put this together so that it's going to be actionable? Because I feel like a lot of times it's not actionable.
Yep.
If that makes sense. I don't know if what I said makes sense, but I'm struggling because there's a lot of noise in this conversation, not this specific one, but about health. And I want to put something together, at least have a start, but I do want to focus on maturity.
So Sherry, I was just going to say, I built the maturation model at Bright Edge. So that was actually one of my core projects back before I left. So 2017.
Okay.
We worked on developing that. I have my whole framework for that. It's still, I think, largely applicable given that it's the same space. So I'm happy to walk you through that and review that with you. The way that we did it, though, was manual. It wasn't, because it was separate than a health score, right? Like the maturation model was really walking the customer through to help them assess their operations internally, right? Because this is a marketing thing and is based on knowledge, but it's also based on their resources and their ability to get things done, right? Their processes. So that we broke it out against people, process, technology. We had different modules for each thing. And the way that we did it is we actually worked with our customers and we had them score themselves, and then we scored them. And we said, based on our understanding of your business and what we know about what you're trying to achieve, here's where we say you are, here's where you say you are, here's a delta. But then more importantly, what we did is we came up with very prescriptive recommendations. So we had them hone in and say, if you're here, if you're like a level 1 on this, and your goal right now is to get to a level 3, obviously we're not going to advance on all the metrics, but like, let's focus on like 2. And we came up with a very prescriptive plan for that company to advance their maturation in those different core areas. And I will tell you, we did this with a lot of our enterprise companies, Sherry, and it was wildly successful. Not only did they love it because they got to really kind of check themselves for a minute and say like, oh, no, here's where we think we are. But when you had an outside company actually say, but actually, as we take a look at, your operations versus every other company in a similar space, here's actually where you are and where you need to be. And then giving them a plan and a roadmap to get there. Like, they loved it. I won't tell you the customers that we had using it,
Right.
but they were huge and really, really embraced it. And we made that a different conversation than our typical EBR, QBR. It was something that happened also in the journey, but we only started that conversation when a customer was interested in it, right? Like, we didn't try to force it on anybody because that is too much to digest if you're not going to do anything with the output of it. So when a customer would come and say, hey, listen, like, we're just not feeling like we're getting what we need out of the partnership or the product or whatever the case may be, or we're not seeing the results from our program, that's when we would make the recommendation. But we also were very clear, like, there's a level of work that's involved with executing against this, and here's the time allocation you'll need to invest. But the output of this, and if you want to take this seriously and do this, you will be successful. And we just managed it with them, and they loved it. So
That's
I have
good.
all my framework, I have all my decks, I have all the spreadsheets. Again, circa 2017, but I think still valuable.
Thank you.
Could
I mean, I think that would definitely be awesome because, like I said, I could sit here and tell you a client that just churned because none of the teams that have ever worked with us have ever been like, they're too junior. But I will also say that sometimes trying to help them, to help educate them, I don't know if anybody's seen this, I guess it doesn't matter the space, is that sometimes they're afraid to speak up and say, I'm not sure how to do something, because they think that's going to shine a negative light on them from their management. So they're afraid, they have this, even if we recommend consulting services and things like that, they may actually really need the help, but they're afraid to table that discussion because then it looks like they don't know how to do their job, or that's the perception that they have. So thank you though, Christy. I'm going to reach out to you.
Peter, you were going to drop something in there as well?
Yeah, I can't disagree with what anyone's saying, and we were thinking about this ourselves at Populo, and we started off on that basis, Shari's, which was that it's great to have the health score, but the health score is not actually, doesn't necessarily translate into customer value. Right, a health score is a very, very, it's our measurement, right, and it's numbers typically, and it's our weighting system, but it does not necessarily translate into value. And so we got to thinking about the maturity model as well, to your point, that there's two aspects to it. So how do we measure value in the eyes of the customer, and then where is that customer in terms of benchmarking their peers and so on? And we thought about the maturity aspect, and we said, you know what, let's not call it a maturity model, because a maturity model almost infers that you're on this linear journey and you get to some sort of end point, whereas the reality is, now this is probably just, look, we're all in different industries, so we all have a different twist in this, but I feel that actually you don't have an end point, right? Is that it's a very fluid sort of, so we actually came up, it'd be great to do a separate session on this. We came up with a way of almost like you look across different factors and you ask a whole series of questions based upon those factors. And at any one time, a business is very fluid in terms of where they are with their business, whether they're going through a bad time, a good time, a merger, an acquisition, product's not working well, product is working well. So we just felt that let's call it a success model, right? That we ask all these questions and we can plot them up on a value chart, and then we can identify where the gaps are and where they're not getting value or where they believe their business isn't. Are they leading? Are they good? Are they developing? You know what I mean? So it's, again, I'm not saying this is the right way to do it, but it's just one way to actually do it, is to get it. We just wanted to sort of, we were very careful that our customers will never would never get to that end point, because once they do, where do you bring them? So that was the bit that I kind of struggled with from a philosophical point of view, you know.
So Peter, I'll just jump in there with how we did it. So the maturation model that we built was more like their organizational readiness to be successful, and less on their success outcomes tied to specific programs, right? So like the value or the use cases or the things that they're trying to transform their business with our solution, that digital transformation, that I agree with you, doesn't end, right? Like it should be infinite. There's always going to be things for us to be working on and changing. So those we track separately via success plans, and those we have very clear objectives and outcomes for that the customer has shared with us, because that's what we're trying to solve for, right? It's like that success outcome. So we identify what that is and track that different. So we just use the maturation model. Again, it's organizational readiness. Like, what do you have the infrastructure to actually use our technology and advance the program in the right way?
Real quickly, guys, we're going to be pulled back into the main session in here in just a minute, and Jeff's going to close us out, and he's got 2 questions he's going to ask. One is, what's one key takeaway from today? And then what's one key action that you're going to take in the next week based on the conversation that you had today? So if you feel like sharing anything that you've picked up in this conversation, just, tee that question up, those 2 questions up for you to think about that for a couple minutes. The one thing we haven't really gotten to, because we spent all of our time on this fantastic conversation about the actual scoring, and I love the maturity model thing, is playbooks. So something to keep in mind for next discussion. Playbooks to me are like a very broad topic, and it gets really interesting when you start to think about all those little health factors and what you do in response to those, individual phenomena that occur, with our customers. So, I'll give somebody the floor. You probably got a minute if you want to throw out how you're doing your playbooks. Peter, you want to go, or is he? Oh, okay. Actually, we're getting pulled in right now. So sorry, I used up our last 30 seconds there.
It worked.
All right. Good work. Yeah.
Technology is, if you guys, I broke everybody out into breakout rooms, and the idea was that I was going to go through each breakout room and listen in, but I got too scared. So I literally just stood here watching the screen, making sure nothing happened. So I was on guard the whole time.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah.
If
Awesome.
it works, don't touch it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Well, perfect. I think we've got a couple more people filtering in, but excited to hear more feedback. We'll be sending a survey afterwards as usual. So excited to hear from everybody just about the breakout session concept, how it worked, and hopefully hear more. But to end today's session, since I was not able to go through all the breakout rooms, we thought it'd be great to just try and get back together as a larger group. And so 2 of the questions that I wanted to pose out to the group, and anybody feel free to answer, but the first question is just, what was your one takeaway or one learning that you came away with from the session? And then maybe the second question to answer is, what is maybe an immediate step, or what is one action item that you feel like you're going to go implement within the next 7 days? So open that up to the group and see if there's anybody who'd like to share.
I can kick us off. We had Brian Lafall in our group from Looker, and he shared a really tactical sort of risk assessment summary that he was using. And I think one of the key points he made, among many good ones, was, are you able to identify quantitative leading indicators to have your first pass at your client list, flagging at-risk accounts based on that, quantitative data, and then have a CSM come in and provide some qualitative feedback about the health of the account. And so that concept in general, I think, was a great reminder to hear that. And I've been taking the qualitative approach so far during this, because it's felt very reactive. And that's one thing I'm going to take away, is overlay some quantitative leading indicators over my qualitative list and see if there are any discrepancies. So really appreciated Brian's share today.
Awesome. Anybody else have any examples? One takeaway, one action item?
Hi, this is Sharmila. I'll join in. So first, this is my first call, so thank you so much for everyone who's been sharing and discussing what's been going on. I work for LexisNexis, and I am a CSM. Most of my clients are media clients, so I think one major takeaway is somebody had spoken, and my apologies for not remembering your name, is before sending out communication, really understanding what that company is going through so you can tailor your communication that really hits home and that will provide support. I think with the pandemic and everything going on, it's very important to show support and empathy and compassion, which I think that's what we primarily do, but it's even more important now to show our customers that we are here to support them. So I think that's one major takeaway, is really understanding and doing that research. And luckily for me, because I work for LexisNexis, I have a lot of data that I can search on companies and pretty much anything. So I think that's one takeaway. And I think the action step is really communicating that with my team and making sure that they're doing the same things, so we can all kind of be on the same understanding and come as a united front, especially with what we do as an organization for so many organizations that are out there. So thank you so much. This has been a really great call. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. I appreciate that. How about maybe Alex Farmer? I'm going to call on you if you don't mind, and maybe give us your one takeaway, maybe one next step that you took away from today's conversation.
I was wondering, I think alphabetically, I don't know if it puts the videos alphabetically, but I always get picked on. Maybe it's because my webcam is so sorry. It's a standing desk that I've converted in my house. I'm sorry, folks, for the angle there. It's not my best, but so I thought was interesting. The big takeaway for me was, again, I'm sorry, I can't remember who said it, but I think it was the first speaker in our breakout session was talking about executive outreach, and that being a key thing for them, essentially assigning, I think it was 25 accounts to each of their C-level executives and having personalized email templates reach out, basically just to kind of ask how they could help. It kind of struck me, that's always been on, I think actually this person said the same thing. It's always been on your to-do list to kind of do a proper executive outreach program, and this definitely jumped it up that person's to-do list and now has done the same thing for me. So, I mean, I think it depends on how long this thing goes on and how kind of high touch or low touch, how many customers you have, right? If it's can be a call or if you have to go big bang with exec outreach. But I thought that was a key point in our group to answer the question of how we're changing our approach to playbooks and if we're kind of flipping the script a little bit. I thought that was key. So thanks for picking on me, Jeff.
Yeah, no problem. Maybe Jennifer Kirkland, you're in my mode of view here. If you don't mind, maybe coming off mute and sharing maybe one of your takeaways from the session that you sat in on.
Yeah, I joined a little bit late, but as soon as I joined, it was really amazing to hear everybody say all the things that I've been kind of coming up with in my head and working to execute at Conversica and everything. And it was just really validating in that sense to hear that segmentation matters in regards to who your customers are. The scores are not going to be the same. I was in the scorecard breakout. The scores are going to be the same for every customer type. Scores are going to be different depending on where they're at in the life cycle. And your action items that you're going to be taking are going to be impacted by the level of maturity that the customer is at. And we were working on building this framework, and I just loved hearing that other people were operating in the same methodology. We're really driven towards having skill within our CSMs. We thought that was critical, and it was great hearing that.
Awesome. How about, I think I've got Anna, Ali, maybe, if you don't mind sharing from your session.
Yeah, so we in our business are actually working right now on crafting a health score. So the conversation in our session, I was in Jennifer's session as well, was super valuable and helpful in terms of just kind of validating that a lot of the things that we're looking at putting in and creating as part of our health score are the right things, or at least seem to be the right things based on the conversation that we had. So that was really super encouraging. And there was also some interesting conversation at the end, which is what I'm kind of taking. It's not so much a tactical takeaway as it is a philosophical takeaway to kind of take back to my leadership team to think more about. But we had some interesting conversation towards the end around health score versus customer value, and how do you think about the difference between the two, because health score is not necessarily indicative of the value that you're delivering to the customer. And so it's something that we've talked about internally at Avid Exchange as well. But there was just some interesting conversation and some points there that I definitely want to be able to explore further. Awesome.
Sarah Bocchino, how about you?
Yeah, I was, we're getting a lot of our,
Oh no.
from the same session. No worries.
No, it's
but
fine.
I think it was really, again, to build off of what Jennifer said, really insightful to just kind of understand that everybody's considering health scores or launching it, but it's not the only thing that we can look at. In my organization right now, one thing that I heard today was aligning health to the success life cycle, right? And understanding that at different stages, we can at least prescribe where we can see customer health. And if we judge it, or if we're gauging it in those different stages, we can perhaps put some more rigor or playbooks or programs in place to help ensure that customers don't degrade, or that we're continuing to progress that health score. So that's something we're launching right now, or that we're frameworking out right now, is our success life cycle. So that was really valuable to hear that others are looking at that.
Perfect. What about I think Diana, are you on as well? I think I saw your face when I was scrolling through here. Do you want to share a little bit maybe what we heard?
Yeah, so a topic that came up was around when the POC leaves, and was actually a story that I shared about a POC leaving and us having to demonstrate value again, because the person that came up and is now at a leadership level, and we have to demonstrate the value again of our tool. And so somebody shared a story of like, having different goals depending on where we are in the chain. So for example, like, the champion would have a different goal compared to like the VP or something like that. So being able to speak to the value that you provide at each step of the way is important. So my goal now is to take this back to my team. And another thing that was shared was just having a one-pager of all the value that you've been providing. So documenting your value so that if something like this happens, you can quickly pull that up and read that off. So that's what I'm taking away.
Awesome. And then I know Dave Epperly, I'm going to call on you for a minute. It looks like you had a good message in the chat just about, potentially trimming some of your health score, given that we're going through this time. I don't know if you're still on or not, but do you mind maybe expanding on your point a little bit?
Yeah, hey guys, Dave Epperly here from Red Canary. We're a cybersecurity company. We're very high touch. We're also pretty nerdy. So over time, these things tend to get out of hand in terms of health score, forecasting, et cetera. More data, more data, more data. And we've really taken the opportunity over the last couple of weeks rather, to just run side-by-side comparisons to what we're currently running in terms of health scores and forecasting with a much pared down and simplified version. It makes life, frankly, much easier for everybody. And what we have found unanimously is that at least the CSMs kind of agree that those scores, those predictions are much more accurate from what they can predict and what they can see. So, we've had this concept and implemented over time, for at least the last 4.5 years. And I think that what this crisis has presented us with is the opportunity to go back to basics and really get right what the fundamental pieces of that health score are. That's it.
Awesome. Appreciate that. We've got about 3 minutes left. I know we always like to end these on time, but any final thoughts? How about Jim Jones? You got anything you felt like you can take away?
Yeah, so two things. First of all, the experience that some companies are having, customers saying, hey, I don't have time to talk to you right now, or call me in a month or whatever. great indicator of churn and a great indicator of slowing of potential sales. So it's good to know we're not the only ones in that boat. The second thing is somebody said that they basically have stopped all new customer marketing, and all the outreach is going through the customer success teams. I can't stand the companies that are marketing to me on LinkedIn, privately or in a full message, across the board to everybody. Hey, we know things are bad with COVID. Let's talk about how we can help your business. And it's like, let's talk about how fast I can unconnect and block you on LinkedIn. You need to be genuine. You need to be authentic. You need to be there for your customers you have relationships with and say, how can I help you? Even if it's just to leave you alone for a few weeks.
Yeah.
And outbound marketing is absolutely inauthentic and tone deaf right now.
Well, I know we've got about 2 minutes left, so we'll try and make sure we get everybody out of here on time. But I appreciate everybody coming. I think, again, we tried the breakout rooms for the first time. Hopefully, you heard some diverse voices in the groups, and that everybody got some more value in terms of having more of an intimate, smaller group. So as always, we'll send out a survey right after. Hope to just gather some feedback, make sure, again, we can keep iterating and drive value. Thanks to Megan, Nils, David, and Jay for leading those sessions. Really appreciate you guys spending some time with us. And then, as we mentioned, we're excited about launching this community in terms of a platform between these sessions that we do on a weekly basis. So if you're interested in helping us get that off the ground, you'll see a little moniker in the survey that we send out. So please indicate if you'd like to help us do that. So thank you again. Hope everybody has a great Thursday, a good weekend, and hopefully we get to get outside and some fresh air.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.
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 Everyone.